So this is a really, really essential thing you need to know about learning, in my opinion, because a lot of people fall victim when they're not equipped with this knowledge, and that is, if that when you're learning properly, if you're actually putting in focus and it's working for your brain and you're beginning to understand it, then after a certain point it's going to start to feel obvious to you, and because it feels obvious, then your brain starts to make you think that it's been obvious the whole time and that you've just already known this thing even before you sat down and started reading. And it's one of the most misleading preconceptions we have about ourselves, that we already know what we just read because it seems obvious, because our brain picked up on the logic so quickly and so effectively that it was as if it was already there to begin with. But it wasn't really. It's just something that matches what we might have expected to learn about, but it's not necessarily what we already knew, if you get what I mean. So what I want to say here is, you did not already know this. You were completely clueless before you learned about this particular thing, and your brain is lying to you. So you did not already know this thing when you read that book. You did not already have that idea circulating in your mind. Now maybe you did, but if that did happen, then you're going to have a particular aha moment as soon as you read it. But if you don't, but it just becomes more obvious to you, and don't convince yourself that you already knew it, because you didn't. And that's why a lot of people stop the reading, and I'll discuss that in a bit. So the biggest perpetrator here is readers of self-help books. So they just assume that, and it might be you, I know it's been me as well, but they just read a self-help book and then they think that they know it then, which is a shame, because that means that they're not going to be reading more self-help books. And self-help books are great to read because you are adding to your own knowledge and skills, and you should be grateful for it. But we just always assume that, well, this knowledge is kind of blank slate, it's kind of simple, I already knew it. But really we do take it for granted because it's a lot more valuable than we think. All these basic principles and values in life all seem so obvious and noble and blank, but they're really something that has taken a while to accumulate, and they are values that guide us more than we realise. And that goes double for the tips that we've picked up in those books. So we do need to assume that we have not known those things before, unless we do have a particular moment, because in 95% likelihood you did not know that beforehand. So it makes things seem obvious that weren't before, but it makes them seem obvious now because they make us understand them so well. So one of the examples is from the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. So the first chapter, the principle for that is never criticize, condemn or complain around people. And I bet it's ringing in your mind right now that, wow, that's so obvious, but we do it all the time. It doesn't matter if we find it to be obvious. As soon as we've learned it, we need to actually read it, and we need to imprint it into our minds and maybe even apply it. And by applying that tip would just be to hold yourself back for a bit from criticizing or talking bad about other people, because that's one of the only valid ways to actually learn something. It's by doing it. It's extremely effective. It's like I don't know, I can't think of a metaphor, but something in real life compared to something on paper. That would be a simile, actually. So this is a major trap that people are falling into, the trap of unconscious incompetence, because they assume that they've already known this, and they've assumed that they've known it for years. Oh, just know the person's name. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I guess I already knew it. You know, within a split second, your brain goes through this entire process, and it's completely beneath your radar, and you don't realize it. So you do need to understand that this is a trap that I'd say 99% of people fall into. They read one book and then they think that it was obvious to them the whole time, and then it stops them from reading anymore. And it's It's literally a sham. It's just a travesty. So, in my opinion, this is the biggest reason people remain stupid. And if we just stop doing this, then we wouldn't be stupid anymore. So one of the benefits of being aware of this is that you have humility, so you're willing to change your life, change your habits, change your fears, change your perceptions, change your mindset. So humility is the huge changer of these things. And even watching this video will require humility, because you're probably thinking right now, oh yeah, this applies to everyone except for me because I already know this. And that's 100% what I'd be thinking as well. But it's not, and I'm not just the originator of this knowledge or anything, or the sole master of it. I'm sure there's millions of other people who've realised it before me, and millions of people who apply it way better than me. But I'm saying now that you do need to not think that this does not apply to you, because it very likely does, and it took me a while of conscious thought to come up with this. So when it comes to the benefits of, again, knowing this, you learn more rapidly, you learn more effectively, because you don't just assume that your brain has already known this concept. And I think that's just a great way to get yourself ahead of other people, because people just assume they've known things. You assume you know nothing because you do know nothing. You know nothing about the universe, you know nothing about, even if you're a physicist, you know nothing about physics, just in relative terms of the universe, because we do know 0% of everything, because everything is infinite, or it's pretty close to infinite, so then our knowledge is pretty close to zero. That's what I'm getting at. So make sure you don't make assumptions about yourself or about your prior knowledge.